Team, welcome back to the channel. And in this one, I want to talk to you about some lessons that I've learned about how to be a platoon sergeant. So maybe you are a team chief and you're looking forward to the next maybe 4 or 5 years, however long it may take. Maybe you're a squad leader and you want to be prepared for that next step, or maybe you're in the process of becoming and fulfilling the duties and responsibilities as a platoon sergeant. So hopefully in this one, can try to break a few things down and share again some lessons learned. And if you have specific questions or some things that you've learned along the way, definitely make sure that you leave some comments down below. That way we can continue to keep this conversation rolling. So I got my first job as a platoon sergeant down in Fort Hood, and I did that for about a year, and then I went on to become a first sergeant in the same battalion but different company. And then I was getting ready to PCS again up to Fort Lewis, and I was sergeant first class. So that whole first year I spent as a first sergeant was without the diamond. Some people would tell you that doesn't count, but I'll tell you, I probably worked twice as hard just because there's a lot of additional pressure. So when I was getting ready to PCS, but even backing that up, when I was PCSing to Fort Hood, I wanted to be a platoon sergeant. I was a staff sergeant at the time, and this is the first lesson and learn that I could share with you, because I did the same thing when I went to Fort Hood, and I did the same thing when I was moving up to Fort Lewis. As I got on, and I found that command sergeant major that I was going to go work for, and I sent them an email, and it was just a few paragraphs long. It was a quick introduction. Hey, this is me. I'm looking forward to any opportunity that exists for me to train and lead soldiers, and I'm really looking forward to becoming and serving as a platoon sergeant in your battalion. I included SRB. I included last couple NCRs. And just things along this nature. And so I kind of planted some seeds. This was a couple months out before I even reported. I was planting seeds to let somebody know that I'm hungry, I'm coming in, and I want to serve. Not that I'm coming and I want to take over. Not that I'm coming and I have it all kind of figured out. I want to come in and be a servant. And the opportunity to do that at the position that I was looking for, which was to be a platoon sergeant, was one that I was highly anticipating and looking forward to the challenges and those opportunities. And so before I got to Fort Hood, I had that job, right? The CSM, he emailed me back, and we had a couple back and forths. And then the same thing when I moved up here to Fort Lewis, CSM, he emailed me back, and so we already had a relationship that was building before I even had boots on the ground. And so I would challenge you to do that. Because here's the thing, command sergeants major at the battalion level hire and fire platoon sergeants. Not the first sergeant doesn't hire them. They shouldn't be, because it's 2 levels down. Right? That's where mentorship is in the Army. It's 2 levels down. So platoon sergeant, first sergeant, battalion command sergeant major. So those are your levels in between. And so I kind of already had this job going into both places. And as soon as I had boots on the ground, I did an office call with the CSM to introduce myself again and just put faces to names, right? Let's talk a little story. This is something that you need to do. Maybe you didn't have the opportunity and you're just reporting, or maybe you're already at a place and you want to be a platoon sergeant. Then do an office call with that command sergeant major. Get some FaceTime with them. Talk a little story. Tell them about yourself. Make sure that you know that unit's mettle. Super important to know what a unit is all about and what those mission essential tasks are. Talk to them about strengths and weaknesses of yourself, and what are they looking for in a platoon sergeant for their particular organization. Because even in the A battalion, every platoon is not going to be different. Every platoon is going to be different. Every company may have that battalion may be set up where each company is a little bit different. And so there may be needs of a particular company that another one may not have. So what is the battalion looking for? On top of the obvious stuff, right? What has that particular company been doing well? What do they need to sustain? What are some different improvements? If you're in the process of PCSing, swinging by and talking to Equal Opportunity Leader or the VA can help give you an assessment of a particular company as it relates to those two areas, which is kind of important. It's kind of really important. Sitting down with that first sergeant, with that commander, and doing the same thing, right? Here's my SRB, here's my NCORs. I'm hungry, I'm looking for a job, and I want to serve you in the best capacity that I can. And wherever the chips fall, they kind of fall. So whether you get the job or you just planted seeds so that in 3 to 6 months down the road, you'll have that job, you're getting after it and you're doing it. That drive cannot be replaced by anything else. The drive and willingness to serve cannot be replaced by anything else. I can't overemphasize that even as a first sergeant, when I have team chiefs and they come to me and they have ideas or they have things that they want to get after, like that drops seeds and memories in my head. Because when needs come up, and they will, I know who's out there who wants to get after it. I know who has drive and integrity and passion for the profession. And there's no other interaction where that's going to happen other than a face-to-face, or in some cases with an email. But emails only go so far. So the other thing I think we need to remember in this is that communications are established from lower to higher, never from higher to lower, right? If you have a main post set up and a TAC moves forward, or a smaller subordinate element moves forward, it is up to that organization to transmit back and say, this is me, this is where I'm at. It's never the other way around, right? Does that make sense? So remember that mentality, that communications are established from lower to higher. Get nested with the priorities of that battalion and of your company. Know what is important to those commanders. And so that kind of helps hopefully kind of set the stage for maybe how to get into a job. But what do we do after we're in a job? Couple things you need to get. First one is to remember that everything begins and ends with an assessment. It's an old, way to remember how to answer some board questions. If anybody ever asks you what is the first step of X, Y, or Z, everything begins with an assessment. And so I'm not telling you that you can't make changes right out of the gate, but you need to remember that your organization has been doing things since long before we showed up, and some of them are going to be right and in accordance to the standard. And so take some time to understand what has been going right. So do an assessment. Look through those counseling packets for the soldiers and the NCOs. Come on. NCOs need to be counseled now. Look at the ACFT and APFT scores that you still have on record. Look at your weapons qualification scores. Look at the SRBs of your squad leaders and your team chiefs to begin with, and see how accurate they are. How are they getting after their own professional development? What have they been doing that's been effective? Look and see where your strengths are when it comes to additional duties. Get to know what the past calendar was, and look at your training calendar moving forward. Sit down with that first sergeant and that company commander, whether it's before a training meeting or an administrative meeting or after, with those notes, and say, help me understand what this platoon has bin doing well in the past. What do they need to do? What do we need to do moving forward? Look at your PT calendar. If you don't have one, create one. But do this assessment, of your soldier strengths and capabilities, both technically and tactically. And identify those strengths and those weaknesses. It may take 30 days for some things. For other things, it may be instant. But you need to assess where that organization is sitting at. And now you can kind of try to develop a plan moving forward. And I will tell you that you need to own as much of everything that you can as a platoon sergeant. What do I mean when I say that? Own your PT. Your company may do company organized PT once or twice a week, and everything else is probably up to you. If it's me, I want to do it on my own as a platoon 5 days a week if I can. I want to own it. So I'm going to develop a PT program for my platoon. And we're going to dadgum get after some sauce, right? Look at your Leaders Time training program, if it exists. If it doesn't exist, make it exist. Because there is nothing that can replace the value of getting away from a flagpole and doing training. I don't care what your MOS is. I don't care what branch you are. I don't care what battalion that you're in. There's time and opportunity to get out there. And too many times, platoon sergeants that are weak don't do quality, hard training. And so some of this takes time, right? You need to look at that long-term training calendar. You need to understand where you're sitting at with the quarterly training briefs so that you can get training on the calendar. There is not a command sergeant major out there that is going to tell you not to conduct training if it's planned. Nobody wants to brief training planned but not conducted. Some snafus may happen here or there, but for the most part, they want you to get after it. So get away from the flagpole. Get out and reserve some training areas. Get out from the cantonment areas. To begin with, you may be stuck with using cantonment areas. But given some time, or if you're savvy in using all the resources out there, you can coordinate with some adjacent units to co-occupy some land. Run your own ranges as a platoon. The only way to do that is by having those additional duties, right? You need to be able to move and transport ammunition. You need to have your CLS, your radio operators, and everything else. But manage that yourself. Put in the ammo requests. Put in the request for land. Land and ammo take the longest to coordinate. And chow anymore. So look out 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months down the road and start doing some things. Do some primary training events as a platoon. A lot of units are already kind of do that kind of things with a variety of tables that are out there, but a lot of organizations don't. And so if you can, take your platoon to the field for a week, for 2 weeks, and do platoon stuff out in the field. Nothing will replicate getting dirty and getting sweaty in the mud and the wind and the rain and embracing the suck. Where are you sitting at with counselings and with leader development programs? Don't wait for somebody else to start doing things. If your company and if your battalion is not conducting some sort of LDPs, then you need to do one as a platoon. It's too easy. There are so many places on every single post that can accommodate a platoon-sized element. Education centers, theaters, chapels, you name it, they're out there. And all you have to do is go get one reserved. Take an hour and go do some quality training on all things that are admin related, as well as the things that the Army requires. You can conduct your own SHARP and your EO training. Just invite the trainers to come in and get everything logged into DTMS. Speaking of DTMS, you need access to it to read and to write. You need to be able to update your soldiers' records. Same thing with MedPros. You should be able to pull your own MedPros reports and look out not just 30 days and current, but look out 60 and 90 days for all of these things. For everything that the Army requires when it comes to training that's inputted into DTMS, as well as MedPros. Keep your soldiers off of the companies and the battalions' lists. How's your sponsorship going? Yes, that's a company program, but your soldiers and your NCOs are serving as sponsors. So how well are they getting after it? Go and sit in on a battalion. This is as a platoon sergeant or somebody who wants to be a platoon sergeant. Go sit in on a battalion command and staff. Go sit in on your battalion training meetings and see where your company, as well as all the other companies, are getting beat up on. And then do what it takes to not let that happen on your watch. Go sit on a promotion board. You can't be a board member as a platoon sergeant. I mean, technically you can, but you're probably not going to be. But get in there and sit and see how your battalion is running promotion boards. And then take that knowledge back so that you can conduct your own platoon mock boards. So that when your soldiers and your NCOs go to the board, they get goes on the first go around. Require your soldiers and your NCOs to compete in soldier and NCO of the quarter and year competitions. Every single one, without exception, you should have somebody there. Get those wins. They are huge. And the thing is, once you start winning, it becomes easier to continue winning. You have to get after these things. So you need all your access, promote them competitions and those boards. Make sure you counsel your staff sergeants. Make sure your staff sergeants are counseling your sergeants. Know where you're sitting at as the company when it comes to external evaluations. And so look at additional duties. We talked a little bit about a couple of them, but you need to be able to be self-sustainable as a platoon. You need to have your own, make sure that you're solid on all things movement related, all things sustainment related, and get your soldiers into schools. Get your NCOs into schools and get them tasked to be primary or alternates for all of these. Get one of your soldiers as an alternate armorer. That way you know in key control. That way you know you can get access to the arms room to pull weapons out. Again, whether it's to perform your own maintenance or to conduct your own training. Be self-reliant. Take a sit down with your platoon leader. Your platoon leader should be the best platoon leader in your company, and you should fight to make them the best platoon leader in the battalion. You do that by having hard, honest conversations and make sure that they are set up for excellence. So what do PLs get beat up about? They get beat up about maintenance and property and training to a certain degree. So make sure that property is handled to standard in your platoon. Everything is subbed down to those NCOs and subbed down all the way to the individual soldier. Everybody should be signed for gear and property. When you do layouts, everything should be dress right dressed, making it easy for that PL or for that incoming or outgoing commander to inventory. You should have leaders present and everything locked and cocked and ready to rock. Right? Does that make sense? When you're talking to your company commander, which you should do because they are your senior rater, you need to understand what their perception is and what their value is and strengths and weaknesses that they assess of your PL. Do the same thing with your battalion commander. and your battalion command sergeant major. Talk to them specifically about your PL, about what they see that they like, about what they need to see, about what they wish that they were doing, because it all matters. Take your squad leaders out to lunch in the DFAC. I'm not telling you to pay for their chow. I'm telling you to go break bread with your squad leaders. You should do the same thing with your PL. At least once a week. Sit down with both up and down and talk story. Talk last 24 to the last week, as well as whether you need to sit down with them each and every single day. For some things, I've done that in the past before PT, especially when I'm just starting to get a grip on things and get moving in the direction that I think that they need to be moving, or whether it turns into once a week. Lead your squad leaders, and then with your team chiefs, remember that that is who you are mentoring. So you need to spend as much time or even more time with those team chiefs. Those team leaders are going to replace you. What kind of platoon sergeants are they going to end up being? They're going to end up being crappy if we're crappy. So take your due diligence to spend time with them. Make sure that you're getting in the barracks. Man, team chiefs and team leaders should be in those barracks every single day. But make sure they're signing in the visitor logs so that they get credit for what they're doing. You should be in the barracks at a minimum 2 to 3 times a week. Talking story with the soldiers. Checking on their work orders. Making sure that they're living right and don't have any problems. These are just a few basic things, team, that I think as emerging platoon sergeants or NCOs who want to be platoon sergeants need to have in the back of their head as they're moving forward. Hope you enjoyed the content. I don't think I had any other notes here. I'm going to look real quick. I'm just kind of talking off the cuff. The only other thing I'll share with you before we cut this off is, we talked about sitting down with, the CSM, with the battalion commander, with your company commander, with your first sergeant, but make your rounds in with the S1 and with your S3. Kind of touched on that a little bit as far as at least sitting in on a training meeting and a command and staff, but go sit with them on a weekly basis. To check on your soldiers' action requests, or to see what the training or tasking requirements are, and see what's upcoming. But talk story and build relationships, because when you need something, those are the two shops that are going to help set you up for success. All right, does that make sense? Build relationships up and out. So, team, I hope you enjoyed the content of this. If you did, of course, make sure you like it and subscribe it. Share this out with a friend or battle buddy, and definitely leave some comments down below as we continue to master our craft and develop our tactical virtue. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.